Welcome back, everyone. It's Friday. I just got done with my back workout today. Um, I don't know. Back is my least favorite workout. I don't know. I've never really cared for lifting back, and I think part of the reason is I can only feel a certain part of my back. Like my feeling stops at like chest line, so I can only really feel like the upper portion of my lats. So I don't know. It just never. It's like boring to me. Like, it's gotten a little better since I've added a lot more chin up work and weighted chin ups. Just try to mix it up, make it more interesting, and just make it easier to pick myself up. But yeah, so it's Friday, you know. So today we are going to be talking about overcoming injuries and like surgeries and stuff. So in my life, I've had decent bit of surgeries, decent bit of setbacks. I'm to the point now where nothing kind of surprises me. So, I'm going to start with talking about my first spinal fusion. I have scoliosis. I was diagnosed at a young age. Every year, I would go to Children's Hospital in Pittsburgh, where basically they would do like a clinical day where I would have like all these tests run and stuff. And one of the things that they would do is they would do x rays on me and they would track the curvature of my scoliosis. So I remember every year it was getting worse and worse. And it was to the point where my ribs started to overlap. And I remember this doctor that I've been going to, it came to the point, I believe I was almost 12 when they said, your curvature has reached 60%. At the time, once your curvature reached 60%, they highly recommended getting a fusion done on your spine. So a spinal fusion is basically when they fuse your spine together with they use rods and a bunch of wires and they fuse your back together to try to straighten out your back to align it. So the day had come, I hit 60%. It was kind of something I was always fearing growing up because I knew what it entailed, even though I was so young at the time. I still understood that it was going to be a big surgery. So I had my spine fused when I was 12. It put me out, I think from school. I believe it took me out for almost 6 months. And then at the time, I used to walk with crutches and full body braces. And I understood that it was going to be a long time before I'd be able to get back into the crutches. So I had the fusion done, and it tore me up really bad. I have pins from the bottom of my neck down to my pelvis on both sides of my spine, and then I'll have wires that are connected to each rod all the way down. I have a scar that looks like a zipper. That's what I call it. Still there. It's I I kind of like having scars like that because it reminds me of you know a time that was difficult that I had to get through. But I remember having this surgery done, and it was a lot. I remember waking up and it just being like, holy shit, it hurt. Even somebody that has, paralysis, it's still the pain that I could still feel. It was bad. And I remember going home, could barely move. Like, I mean, I just had my spine fused. So you definitely don't want to move a whole lot or move too aggressively. So I remember, trying to keep my strength up as much as I could. I mean, it was such a major surgery. They didn't really want me pushing myself, which meant somebody else had to push me, which if anybody knows me, I hate when people push me. I can't stand that. Get the fuck off my chair. It's the bottom line. Um, that's who I am. I can't stand it. I can't stand electric wheelchairs, anything like that. Um, I'm, a very independent person, so don't touch my chair unless I really need your help. But I just remember, you know, um, being homeschooled for the time because I could go to school for months. And then I had to wear a upper body brace basically to try to keep everything. in line. And then I could still remember it to this day. It was almost a year before I could get back into crutches. I remember the day of going back into the hospital, and we brought the crutches, the braces, the whole 9 yards with us. And there I am in the office. I put them on. I remember they get me stood up, and they're like, "Okay, go ahead and take a step." Um, I could barely pick myself up. I picked myself off the ground probably about an inch, and it hit me hard. I was like, "Holy shit. Like, this is big, dude. Like, this is gonna be a grind. We're gonna have to work to really come back from this." Now, mind you, in crutches, I could take a normal step for somebody in crutches, like that uses crutches full time. I would say you would take a step and it would be about probably a 5 foot swing. And here I am, I'm barely lifting myself 1 inch. And it like hit me like a ton of bricks of like, damn, dude, like you're gonna have to really figure this out. And it's unfortunate that I wasn't like working out at the time. I was so young. I wasn't even something that crossed my mind at the time. So I just remember being in my driveway and just the progression. Like once I was able to like walk around, I would go to my driveway and I would just walk back and forth until I was able to completely walk um like I was before the surgery. And it was really hard because I understood that in that moment it was up to me. That there was nobody else who was going to do it for me. Nobody else could help me. That was something that was all up to me. Nobody was gonna be able to do that for me, and it was an adjustment for me, and I actually it reminds me, um, when I was 3, I believe his name was Doctor Moore. I give that dude a lot of credit because, when my parents first met him, he basically told them, "I wanna see this kid in crutches. I wanna see this kid up, standing," and to be honest, the man changed my life because Um, my a lot of my independence started from when I was a, young age. My parents never spoon fed me. They never coddled me, and I feel that there's a lot of people out there with like similar disabilities that I have that they're kind of coddled throughout life. And you can kind of see that. And to me, that will really make or break a person if you are coddled. Even yeah, I can see it in able-bodied people too, like people that have no, physical disability. I can tell when somebody's coddled. But so I remember I was fitted for braces at the age of 3, and I started with a walker. This little walker, I mean, it was tiny, and I remember it got to the point where my parents had a ramp at their house, and I would ride down the walker standing. Like I would pick myself up and just ride the walker down. Something that obviously physical therapy was completely against, but that's part of who I am. I've always tried to push the boundaries, the limits, and do my own thing. I'm my own person. And then I remember when I was 5, my parents, as shitty as it was, I think it's funny now, they basically told me that my walker was broke. They wanted to see me switch over to crutches. So they told me that the walker was broke and I had to start using these crutches. They didn't know what else to do, which I get that. Like, how do you tell a 5-year-old, like, no, you're done with this? So the best way they thought of was, nope, it's broke. You have to switch over to crutches. And well, whenever I switched over to crutches, one of the things that like physical therapy wanted me to learn how to do was to go down steps. And going down steps with crutches and braces can be quite the challenge because like you're very stiff, like your upper body, like your entire body is straight, and then you have these crutches, and you have to adapt to be able to go up and down. And you're using a crutch left and right side, and then also your body. So you really have to pay attention where you're at, or it can end very badly. And I remember they were trying to teach me how to get on those steps. And the only way that I really knew how to get on the steps, and felt like confident in myself over the time was to go down backwards. It actually got to a point where I could jump 3 steps backwards. I was able to land like exactly where I wanted to do it. Shockingly, I don't think I've ever fallen down the steps with crutches, which is really shocking to me because I've fallen down the steps in my chair a couple times, but I never had that mistake with crutches, oddly enough. But that was the first real challenge at a very young age where I understood that um, I was gonna have to do this on my own. That yeah, physical therapy was there, but honestly, they were completely against my method. And I remember my parents saying, "Well, he has to figure it out like for himself because yeah, you can recommend things to him and you can suggest things or like train him, but at the end of the day, like none of those physical therapists were in crutches. None of them had paralysis. So what the fuck do they know at the end of the day? They know nothing in that case." And at that point, like I understood that like I have to figure this out. 5 years old, this lesson that um probably a lot of people don't learn until later on in life. Um, I figured out that like in order for me to succeed, like I'm gonna have to work at this really hard. And it was tough. And I got really good at crutches and I used crutches all the way up until I was 17. When I was 17, I realized that for my complete independence and to be able to drive and be able to transfer out of a vehicle quicker, that a wheelchair made a lot more sense. That it just made more sense. Like getting ready in the morning, I didn't have to put the braces on anymore, strap myself in and all that. Like it was a process. It would take probably 10 or 15 minutes. And that was if I did it right the first time. Excuse me. If I didn't do it right the first time, I'd have to take myself back out, reset myself in the brace, and then strap up again because it had straps from um down to above the ankle, like mid like calf area in the front, and then or shin, and then all the way up to like chest. I had straps. So it took some time, and that's when I switched over to the wheelchair. So, what I'm trying to say though is like when you go through situations like this, it's going to be hard and you're going to feel alone a lot of times, like really alone. Like there's going to be nobody there or nobody that can understand because they're not experiencing it. They're not the ones going through it. And you're going to have to figure that out on your own. And it's going to suck. It's really going to suck. Um, so when I was 20, I used to be really big into cycling. I love biking. I love biking outdoors. When I was in college, I was biking 30 miles a day. It would take me about 3 hours. I could do it. And this was my first experience with skin breakdown of my butt. I've had skin breakdown on my feet from standing on braces and stuff, but this was the first time that I'd ever experienced major skin breakdown on my butt. And it was scary because, um, I developed a wound on my butt. I ended up going to a wound clinic when I was in college, which was in Minnesota, is where I was at. And I was by myself. There was, nobody there. Like I had to, so basically they showed me how to pack the wound and everything. When you have a wound in an area like that, like you have to treat it very differently because, um, especially if you're trying to continue life and not just like end up on bed rest, you have to pack the wound, you have to clean the wound, you have to pack it with like this mesh, and then you want to try to keep that wound like with a healthy amount of moisture in order to see it heal. And I was going to this wound clinic for probably 6 months. It was the spring semester, I remember, where it really started to close up. And, I was getting ready to go back to school or go back home in May, and they're like, "Yeah, it's almost healed up. You're good to go." Well, so I come home, and I thought assumed it was all the way healed up. Well, little did we know there was like a canal, I guess you could call it, where basically, yeah, from the surface it looked like it was completely healed up. That was not the case underneath the skin. And within about a month, actually I was going to Children's Hospital. I needed to get my back refused. That's another story. But basically, I said, "Yeah, doc, I got a wound. Is this going to affect the surgery?" And they brought in a plastic surgeon specialist, which I was like, "Oh shit, this is big. Like, they're not bringing somebody like this in to look at this if it's not like major." And she checked it. And she was like, "That's to the bone. You have a wound on your butt that is to the bone." And they admitted me immediately. I didn't realize the severity of the situation until right then and there in that moment. They cleaned the wound out, and basically when they cleaned it out, they almost doubled the size of it. And it was almost the size of a baseball, probably almost the size, like after they cleaned it out. And I was devastated. I remember waking up, I had a wound. They put a wound vac on it, which basically a wound vac sucks out all the, I don't even know, like all the like g- gross stuff, and it sucks it into this machine. It's disgusting. Basically, I woke up with one of those on there, and I was in a bed that basically looked like a giant bathtub. And it was like air would move around and had sand in it. And basically that was to relieve you from pressure. And I spent about 5 days in the hospital. And basically they told me what we needed to do was to we could try to get this to heal naturally, which was going to take time. And little did I know the journey I was going to go on with this wound. They told me it was going to be like 6 weeks. I was like, 6 weeks, that's nothing. I've dealt with worse. 6 weeks rolls by, and nope, nowhere near is it healed up. I'm doing everything I can do. I lived in my parents' bedroom, in their living room for almost 9 months. They had to bring in a special bed. Same thing. It had sand in it. Um, Air fluctuated throughout the whole thing to be able to keep pressure off for you. And basically, that was my home for almost 9 months. And um, early on, I had already gotten very discouraged because I would go to the doctor every month. And mind you, I was being taken to the doctor by an ambulance because they wanted me off of my butt. They didn't want me in my chair much. When I say not much, like if I was in my chair at the most an hour a day, which was quite the challenge. Like I'm bedridden at this point, and I'm not the type to sit around. And it was tough. It was really hard because luckily I had video games, which I'm not gonna lie, that saved me a lot. I used to play this game called Dirt. Maybe some of you people remember that game. At one point, I was number 10 in the world at this game during my time on bed rest. And I was literally number 10. Like that's how much I played it. Um, I read as much as I could. I remember my mom would pack me a lunch. I had a lunchbox there beside me, and she would there'd be multiple bottles of water because there was nobody home. Um, I would use a urinal, and somebody would have to empty it whenever I came home. Like it was a shit situation. And I will say one of the things that got me through mentally, the gym. I've talked about this many a times with people. One of the things that got me through this situation though was I still worked out. Um, Obviously, it took some brainstorming, and I had to really think things through of like, all right, dude, how are you going to continue to do this? Like, because at this point, I was working out. I didn't want to lose what I had, as much as I possibly could. And I, my mom, so what I would do was the bed was here, like here, and then I would park my chair up beside it. And basically, I would lay with my head in my shoulders, like the upper portion of my shoulders, on the cushion of my wheelchair, and my mom would lift off dumbbells to me, and that's how I would, like, hit chest. And I would do that. I believe I did it twice a week. And then I was kinda limited on what else I could do, just being in a bed. Like, I tried to do biceps as much as I could, but also I couldn't move around a whole lot. Because if you move around too much with a wound vac on, it's gonna leak. It leaked so many times, and unfortunately, it would leak, like, on a Friday, and the visiting nurse that would come out every day, or she came out, I think 3 or 4 days a week. Basically, I would have to wait until, like, Monday with that thing leaking, and mind you, the goal is for this to heal up as fast as possible, and, it would leak, and then, like, that's how infection starts. It can start very quickly. So, I tried not to move around a whole lot, and I remember, I would watch a lot of YouTube. I watched a lot of motivational stuff just because, like, it got real dark at night because I'm sitting there thinking, like, mind you, like, at this point, I'm sitting there, I've been there for 6 months now, and, um, start to question life, and I'm like, I almost got kicked out of college because, I started missing class because I would get these really bad migraines from it. And my grades they went down, and I actually had to write a letter to the dean for them to keep me in school. And so I was home for the summer. I'm still paying for an apartment. I was on disability at the time, so that's how I was paying for my apartment. And so I'm paying for an apartment in Minnesota that, like, I'm not at. And, like, we're already into the fall semester. I'm not back to school. And I'm like, I'm not going to be there for the spring semester either of this year. Like, it's really fucked my life up. And, I just started questioning everything. I'm like, am I ever going to get out of this bed? And so, like, at night, those thoughts would just creep in, and I would watch YouTube, and I started doing push-ups actually. So I would wait until everybody else was asleep, and it would be like 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning because I didn't have a schedule. So, like, I would be up throughout the night basically, and I would do 300 push-ups every night. Basically, I would rest my legs in the bed, and I would, like, be have my hands on the floor. So basically, it was like I guess it'd be a decline or incline. Yeah, it'd be considered a decline. Decline? I don't know. Basically, there was an angle, and I would do 300 push-ups every night. And I got these grippers. I don't know if you know what a hand crusher is. Basically, it's those, like, things that work a grip. Um, I started writing that down. Like, I would track my sets, and, like, it was to the point that I was working towards closing the 300-pound gripper, which, if you've ever worked with grippers, like, it's tough. Like, grippers suck, man. Like, I got to the point I actually built up callus on my hands. So I did that, and then video games, and then at the time I was really big into RCs, like nitro cars and stuff. So I can remember my brother. Um, it got to the point where we got a little brave, and I'm like, man, I got to get the fuck out of this house. This shit sucks. So it got to a point where my brother would either he had a S10 extended cab S10, and it was the old S10 that had, like, the jump seat in the back. He would fold that up, and I would ride around in the back of his truck. Or I remember we went to Hank's. It was a custard stand, and I remember we put me in the bed. I was in the bed of the truck, laying in the bed of the truck, and I remember, people pull up to a red light, and I would pop my head up, and they're like, "What the? Why is that guy back there?" And then one night, uh, because it got to a point where I'm like, I got to get out. Like, I got to do something. I remember we went to Walmart, and I think I stayed in the car with my mom had a Chevy Venture van, and we would fold the seats down in the back, and I would lay in the back. And I remember this one night, the night we're at Walmart, and there's a red light there, and I was like, I wouldn't turn on red on this light. And my brother, he turned anyways, and I was like, "Dude, what if that dude down there's a cop?" And lo and behold, it was a cop. And this dude pulls us over and he's got the flashlight out. And, it's like I think there was like 4 or 5 of us in the car. And he's like shining the light and he's like, what's he doing? Why is he laying back there? And my brother made up some bullshit lie. He was like, oh yeah, we're getting him out of the hospital, which I'm like, dude, you're out of your mind for lying to this cop right now. But so he lied to the cop. We got out of it, no ticket. And he was just like, get him home. Um, and then it got to a point where my parents had a one of those old ass bench presses that was like it basically like metal and like vinyl, and the pad was like this freaking big, and it had the plastic weights with concrete in them. And then I remember I would go down there for an hour, and just to like oh my gosh, like mentally it did so much for me. I would go down there and just lift, and like it would clear my head. I was able to get a good workout in. And, I really I feel really good that I didn't gain weight. I actually lost weight in my legs, which is weird because, like, I can't use my legs. It got to the point I can knock on my legs and it sounded like knocking on a piece of wood. It was weird. But, I think it was about the 7-month point where the wound had closed up enough where they said that they could do a skin flap. And basically, a skin flap is when they turn the skin on your butt and they cover like where the wound is with your skin. So I had that done. I get to the hospital. I had drains in. The drains fell out within days, which I'm like, great. It's gonna be another setback. Like the point of a drain is for it to drain it. Well, no more drains. And then I think it was by like month 9, they're like, all right, dude, you can start get back in your chair. You can start, but build up to it. Be very careful. Um, they got me a different wheelchair cushion. I got a different cushion on my bike just to be able to continue to do the things that I love to do. And I was able to get through it, but it was a long ass journey, man. It was 9 months, 9 fucking months of like just thoughts, me and my thoughts, and like patience. With when it comes to like injuries, the biggest thing is being patient with yourself. If you're not patient with yourself, you're gonna you set yourself back even further. You know, um, Surgery, same thing. Like, don't push yourself too much. I mean, obviously, like if you have that drive in you, like don't lose that. Do what you can do. Come up with an idea, to keep yourself occupied. But whatever you do, don't overdo it, man. Because like if you set yourself back, like you're gonna be right back to where you were. And that shit sucks. So do not, do not overdo it. Keep your mind occupied though, and try to cherish the support that you have if you do have people in your life that support you, but also continue to remind yourself that like those people around you may not understand what you're going through. So be patient with them also. I've been in many situations where it's been hard for me to be patient with the people that are there to take care of me or around me, because like that frustration is going to build in you, like especially if you're an active person and you just got hit with this, setback, this injury or a surgery. Um, that frustration is going to kick in hard because you're not able to do the things that you love to do, or you might have to change things up of what you're able to do. So be patient with the people around you. You can talk with them as much as you want, but at the end of the day, like it's going to be hard for them to completely understand what it is that you're going through. So patience, um, and have faith, trust the process. Um, just understand, like try to, respect what the doctor's telling you to do. Trust the process, understand that it's gonna take time, but we're gonna get there. You have to stay positive as you possibly can because like if you don't, like I said, it is so easy to go to the negative side of things and be like, you know what, fuck this. I'm never gonna recover. I'm never gonna do this, blah, blah, blah. Like it is so easy to go to that point. But you have to stay positive. Self-talk, a lot of self-talk. Maybe set a goal for yourself once you're recovered, but definitely stay positive with yourself. Trust the process. Have faith in the process. Have faith in yourself. Um, Understand that you're doing the best that you can do in that moment, and it's going to be a grind. It's going to be a process. At some point, I'll get into when I blew my shoulder out, and but I don't want to. I don't want to get too deep into things today, but yeah, that's what I really recommend. But it can be hard to go through stuff like that, especially if it's, you know, something you've never had to deal with. I think it's one thing if you've been down this road before, you know, over the years, after a few of my setbacks, I've kind of learned like I guess I kind of have a like a manual, like a playbook of like, man, we've been here. You know what you got to do, fucking do it. You know what I mean? Like, um, once you've been through enough shit, like you kind of know. For the most part, I mean, obviously every situation is going to be different, but um, yeah. Sorry, I kind of lost my train of thought there, but don't quit. I guess at the end of this, what I'm trying to tell you is like, don't quit. Don't quit on yourself, no matter what. You can get through it. You will get through it, and you will come out of it stronger. Um, as long as you stick with it and work your ass off. So, um, with that being said, like, share. I hope you're enjoying the podcast. I'm currently like I'm banking some episodes before I release, so this is going to be one of my banked episodes. But follow along on my social media accounts. Follow along on whatever podcast streaming app that you use. Um, and the podcast is Stitch Time Podcast. So I'm going to leave you with adapt, overcome, and conquer. Till next time, guys. Later.